Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
What's happening inside the church is the completely normal practice of the Christian faith. What's abnormal is how the government is treating them. Sheila Gunn Reid for Rebel News here at GraceLife Church near Spruce Grove, Alberta. Now, while I'm here at GraceLife, we have two other Rebel teams in other churches across the province. These are churches, just like GraceLife, who are opening their doors to as many congregants as they can hold, as opposed to the government's 15% of fire code capacity lockdown rule. We've got a team in Fairview Baptist Church in Calgary and another team in Medicine Hat at Heights Baptist Church. GraceLife Church behind me has been the epicenter of the fight for churches in Alberta to be able to practice their religions and gather together as they see fit when the government is limiting their capacity and how they do worship. Right now, GraceLife's pastor, James Coates, is behind bars at the Maximum Security Edmonton Remand Center for breaking the lockdown restrictions on places of worship. Now, today I can report that despite near constant surveillance from at least 7 law enforcement vehicles and 1 Alberta health inspector, no lockdown tickets were issued to this capacity crowd of worshipers, but it has not always been this way. GraceLife in the past has been issued a $1,200 lockdown ticket. The church received an official closure notice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dina Hinshaw, that they have defied. Pastor James Coates was arrested and then released. That happened on February 7th. However, the following Sunday, he was back up on the pulpit, at which time local police asked him to turn himself in the following business day. So that was Tuesday, February 16th, and he's remained in police and provincial custody since then for breaching a health order that would require him to turn away 85% of his congregation and force the other 15% that remains into masks to attend services here. Now, Pastor Coates has been offered bail, but his conditions would require him to adhere to public health orders that would limit his church services. And so, as a man of good conscience, he simply cannot comply. So he remains now without bail in Edmonton's maximum security jail, a place that has ironically seen 2 COVID outbreaks. And to add insult to injury, Pastor Coates is also serving his first 2 weeks in COVID isolation as part of the intake to a provincial facility. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is representing Pastor Coates, so we know that he's in great and capable hands, and there's a March 3rd appeal of his bail conditions in Stony Plain Provincial Court. Now, last week, Pastor Jake Spence preached to a full house here, and it was the same again this week. And again this week, I came at 5 a.m. just in case the local RCMP changed the locks on the congregation. And I'm pleased to say my early morning stakeout proved fruitless again this week. It seems as though the media is losing interest in what's happening here. This week, only 2 other journalists besides myself showed up, and one of those was very briefly, and the other was for the local newspaper. I guess with police not arresting or ticketing for the last 2 weeks, the media isn't really getting what they're coming for. And as always, the church is monitoring who is coming on and off the property. And so the journalists, the few that remain who do come, have to stay in the ditch on the other side of the road. They've just allowed Rebel News inside. That's it. And I'm not recording inside the church anymore because this is just a normal church service. And the congregation doesn't want to become a spectacle, and they don't want a spectacle here. What's happening inside the church is the completely normal practice of the Christian faith. What's abnormal is how the government is treating them for practicing their faith. But I think by measuring what's happening here and by being here week after week and by the congregation being so politely undeterred, and while still calling for respect for law enforcement who are here to keep the peace, all of those things are beginning to affect the reaction of the authorities. And they're taking a more hands-off approach. I'm pleased to say that nothing all that strange happened here this week, except, of course, for 7 police cruisers monitoring a church service in a free country. But we will be following the case of GraceLife and Pastor Coates as it winds its way through the legal system, including the appeal hearing for Pastor Coates on March 3rd. For Rebel News here, just outside of Edmonton, Alberta at GraceLife Church, where the pastor here, James Coates, is nearly complete his second week in COVID isolation in custody at the Edmonton Remand Center for the crime of preaching during the times of COVID. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. If you'd like to show support for religious freedom and for the folks here at GraceLife to worship as they see fit, and to send a message to the provincial government that locking up pastors is an un-Canadian and authoritarian thing to do, please consider signing and sharing our petition at freepastorjames.com.